Welcome to the 72nd Annual Alfred Korzybski Memorial Lecture. In 1952, the Institute of General Semantics initiated an annual program to remember Alfred Korzybski, who died 2 years earlier. The program became known as the Alfred Korzybski Memorial Lecture Series, or AKML, and it has featured prominent authors, scientists, psychologists, scholars, and educators, including Abraham Maslow, Buckminster Fuller, Albert Ellis, Ellen Langer, Douglas Rushkoff, Deborah Tannen, Jerome Bruner, Sherry Turkle, Gregory Bateson, Neil Postman, and many others. Joining the ranks of these most influential thinkers and scholars is this year's AKML speaker, Dr. Maryanne Wolfe. Dr. Wolfe is the director of the Center for Dyslexia, Diverse Learners, and Social Justice at the UCLA that integrates research, advocacy, and education to support diverse learners and promote social justice. The three pillars in the title of the center she leads, dyslexia, diverse learners, and social justice, are not just academic pursuits, but a call to action and a reminder of the importance of recognizing and nurturing the unique strengths of every learner and supporting the ways in which each contributes to society. Prior to her current position, she was John DiBaggio Professor of Citizenship and Public Service at Tufts University. Her books, including Proust and the Squid, best title, Tales of Literacy for the 21st Century, and Reader Come Home, have been translated into numerous languages, including Spanish, French, and Chinese. Dr. Wolfe is also renowned for her practical contributions to the field of reading. She co-authored a universal predictor of dyslexia and developed a program which supports struggling readers. Her innovative approaches have transformed how educators and clinicians address reading difficulties, providing hope and strategies for countless readers and learners. Dr. Wolfe's dedication has been recognized with prestigious awards, including the Dyslexia Foundation's Einstein Award for her groundbreaking research. Her exploration of media's impact on intellectual development earned her the Media Ecology Association's Walter Ong Award for career achievement in scholarship. And most recently, she was elected as a permanent member of the Pontifical Academy of Science. Maryanne Wolfe's career exemplifies the spirit of general semantics, a discipline that applies scientific thinking and language strategies to solve real-world problems. Her lecture is entitled Deep Reading in the Digital Milieu, The Beauty, the Threats, and Choice. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Maryanne Wolfe. Thank you.
So I first have to tell you that I thought I was speaking between 8 and 9. So I have 10 minutes left to give you a 1-hour talk. But I want to begin by thanking Lance. Someone tonight said something beautiful, that she had found her people. I had the opposite experience. My people found me. It was wonderful. But I have a tiny, now I have to tell you, I'm a cognitive neuroscientist. They don't tell jokes. They are terrible at jokes. So even the slightest whimsical thing, please give me a break and laugh. And the first thing I'm going to tell you actually is a tiny bit of a joke on me and you. Lance wrote me and said that this wonderful award was going to be given by the Institute of General Semantics. And I knew about the media ecology. I knew about that. But I have to admit, I didn't know about you. And so I said, I want my sister-in-law, my former sister-in-law, might call my sister out-of-law, which is interesting because she's a lawyer and some of you know her. And I said, I just want to be sure that she comes. And I wrote Deanie. Her name, for those of you who don't know, is Nadine Strawson. So I wrote Deanie and I said, Deanie, could you please come now? I know you don't necessarily have heard of this group, but would you please just come and be my dinner companion and along with a dear friend, Christine Hurley Summers. The next email is not to me, where's Marty? It's to Marty Levinson. And she says, Marty, would you be so kind, since after all, I was your 2019 winner of the Alfred Korzybski Award. And I'm like, oh my gosh, faux pas number one. But the reality was that Deanie and I actually represent two parts of the many vectors of knowledge that are represented in this group. And so I really mean this when I say it was such a delight to be discovered by Lance and by some of you, because my work, which has become a cross-section of disciplines, has now become actually a strange arm of you. And I'm going to illustrate that. Now, I actually did think I was going to have a 65.5 minute talk for you, but I'm going to nevertheless ask you, do you want 50 minutes or 60 minutes or 45?
Whatever you do.
Whatever I give. He's actually read some of my work, so we'll begin with this. I'll just go for it. We're just going to go together. We're going to explore different forms of knowledge, and it begins with a very important premise that we share, and that is that basic human rights include literacy, and that literacy quite physiologically, not just literally and figuratively, physiologically. This is interesting. This is going to test us all. It changes the human brain. It changes the intellectual trajectory of every individual, which changes society, which changes our species. Now, I have, as the slide that's not in front of you, talked about the differences, and here Marshall McLuhan, Walter Ong, all talk to us about the transitions of communication in the species. And you and I, Jesse, were talking about the origins of language. We have been at a moment of transition, orality to literacy, but now we are in a move from literacy to a digital culture with absolute ramifications for all of us. I once, in Reader Come Home, the story inside, the reading brain in a digital culture, I once called this a hinge moment. The hinge moment has passed, and we must, like Walter Ong, deal with the fact that we are all steeped, just as our children are, in 2+ mediums. What are the implications for that? What are the implications for not having my slides in front of me? I will nevertheless not lose a moment. And it begins with the philosopher who talked about human beings as language animals. Many of you have read the work of Charles Taylor. He said this: possessing a language is to be continuously involved in trying to extend the powers of articulation. There is always a feeling that there is something within language that is not directly outside, but which comes from the mind spurred on by language, the drive in turn to couple everything fed by the soul with a sound, so that finite means have given us the potential for the infinite. We are language animals, But we possess this drive. And even if I don't have the slides in front of you, I want to really insist that we examine ourselves. This drive to articulate, to put our best thoughts, as Proust said, into words, and words drive us. Now, I also use in all of my work a combination of literature, philosophy, anthropology, history, theology, along with cognitive neuroscience. And you're going to hear some of this, even if I have to read it to you. And I will read to you. It is, in Hermann Hesse's words, all life longs for language. Think of the beauty of that. Deep intuitions wish to surface, find words, always evolving our forms of understanding. All the books in the world, he said, will not bring you happiness, but they will build a secret path toward your heart. But what I want in both Charles Taylor and Hermann Hesse, and then next in Toni Morrison, whose portrait that some of you saw outside. Remember, some of you know Toni Morrison's Nobel Prize lecture, which was one of the more beautiful essays, in which she said, I hope you remember this. Do some of you remember this? Word work is sublime because it is generative. It makes meaning that secures our difference, our human difference. We die. That may be the meaning of life, but we do language. That may be the measure of our lives. It's an extraordinary statement. It's a statement that brings all of you here. You do language, but you do it in so many ways. John, you made my heart flutter. And Tom, you made it kind of stop every once in a while during the chorus. But all of you are doing so many things. I think of the art, the imagery, the media. We are doing language, and language drives thought. Do we have it? No. Okay. You just stay with me. When I put all this together, it's about how this language, but especially written language, changes us. It's our canary. It's the, Vonnegut talk about the canary in the mines. We talk about language as the canary in our mind, and how we study it gives us a sense of who we are at any part of the epic of human development. But at this moment of time, language is changing. Not just oral language, but written language is changing. And it's really important for him to get the slides ready, because I want to show you what your brain does on language. I want to show you in 30 seconds what the circuitry of your brain is. I'm giving him a little hint. He's trying to, you know what, I have my computer. Would that help at all? Would my computer help? I always have a backup, just like my sister-in-law. We bring backups, we bring plastic bags. We never thought they were needed. However, so this is a test. Who recognizes him? Who among you recognizes this philosopher named Nicholas of Cusa? Oh, dear Lord. I was part of the Pontifical Academy of Science. Surely that matters this moment. It doesn't. Okay. Oh. Okay. Do you know what? Some of you were teachers before. Some of you are teachers now. What do teachers do? They never stop teaching. Okay, we're going to go with it. I almost invited my son to come. This is the moment when I'm thinking, what the heck? You and I, okay, here we are. Okay. At this moment in time, we really have two parallel truths about the beauty of technology, different mediums. And what I'm going to be showing you, not just in evidence, but in the story of what is happening to our youth from 0 to young adulthood in terms of the changes to the use of reading on screens. And whether or not you get this, I'm going to use whose frontal lobe. Is it Noah? Isn't it Noah? The fact that I remember your name. Come on. I may need your frontal lobe. We are going to show you the reading brain circuit no matter what. So let's just hold on. Let's see. We'll see if I can get you there. I was really quoting Lance's in the next slide. Lance, your slide, your beautiful essay in this issue of Etc. was an extraordinary experience for me in its profundity, but also in me understanding more and more about Alfred Korzybski. But this slide that you don't see more than 30 milliseconds, which is actually your attentional system like nothing I intended. This slide shows you what I do. This is cognitive neuroscience research. Basically what we are doing is taking interesting questions about human development and studying it in terms of the growth of the brain over time. And tonight, you're only going to get to see this one, okay? You're going to see about the impact of what digital screen reading does to all of us. Now, what I intend to do with this, Stanislas Dehaene is really one of the people in my field who give us an understanding of how important it is to understand a circuit in the human brain. And what we have in language is a circuit. When we have other aspects, they're all circuits. But reading, written language, is something totally different because it's an invention. And it requires a design principle in the human brain that really differentiates us from the rest of the species. And that design principle allows us to make new connections among genetically programmed other circuits. So reading is a circuit that connects so many parts. And maybe we'll see them, and maybe you won't. But Noah is going to help me show you, even if we don't have the start slides. And Noah, you took talk. Oh, this is supposed to be streamed, but they can't see anything anyway. So maybe, is that okay if I move? Lance, does it matter? Oh, you know what? I'll at least come over here for the poor people who have no idea what's going on. So, Noah, you come here. And what I'm going to do is give you a quick look. Now, what the first slide I would show you is a brain of a woman that I hope some of you know who this is. How many of you know the female teacher of Socrates, who really was the inventor of the Socratic method? Diotima. How many of you know Diotima? So I always, oh goodness, let's just give it a shot. Okay, Diotima's head is going to appear to be open for once. Okay, so don't move. I'm going to But what we're dealing with in this circuitry is the ability to connect all of these parts of the brain. So these frontal areas are going to be what is absolutely being challenged by all of you this moment. This, you didn't think I intended to do this. I didn't. But you are being distracted time after time by me going here, there, here, looking at this. This is not a bad example of what is going on in our brains and our brains of children who are being taxed by being distracted from thing to thing 27 times an hour. Now, if you think it's the... We have a hint. This just have a hint of what I can say. This is the worst I've ever had. You are Did you see that one? Okay. The first grade up there is the English alphabet reduced to a few parts. The second is the Chinese. Who speaks Chinese or Japanese or reads? Okay, I want you to realize quickly the difference is just at a rudimentary level about what that brain is showing you. It's showing you that Chinese or the Japanese kanji is utilizing more of the occipital lobe areas in both hemispheres. You go back here. So all of this is happening here that isn't happening in an alphabet. Why? Now this is a circuit for Japanese or Chinese that has many similarities but differences. Why? The circuit reflects the language. And Chinese, how many symbols, characters, do we need about 5th grade in Chinese? At least 5,000 to 6,000 characters are needed by 5th grade. Now, Noah's brain better be able to really be recruiting more areas here and here to be able to do that. That's a different circuit, right? Now, there's a principle underlying this. The human brain was never meant to read. This is the first line in Korzybski's way. The human brain was meant to do all these wonderful things about language and vision and perception and feeling. No written language. There's not a gene in your head for written language. There are genes for all these others, and there are the genetic design principles that allow us to put all of this together. But the implication is that the reading circuit is malleable. It's plastic. The plasticity of the reading circuit means that how we read, the medium on which we read, the educational methods, the person who studies speech and language, your grandson, Terry, the study of all of these areas will affect how the circuit develops. The medium is the one that I'm interested in talking to you about tonight. Because how we read upon what medium will reflect the use of that circuitry. Now, here's where Noah's brain is going to have to be really exploited. We are 50. Did you see it said 30-second walking tour? Never did I think that was really going to be true. But it's going to be true. Okay, here's Diotima. Do you see her? Oh, gee. So Diotima's brain is going to be manifested. Here's Socrates looking on assiduously while she's teaching him. What we're seeing here is the beginning of the circuit part that every human child is developing individually over those first 5 years. And then our job as a society is to ensure the development of all those component parts. Now, Noah, I'm going to really try really super hard. This is your visual system. That was about your attentional system and on vision. Now that's a really good way. Okay. And then what we're doing with Noah is to show that what we do in that circuit is to connect those 5 major networks or circuits themselves. So we take the attentional system, the visual system. The visual system then connects to the language systems. And here I use George Eliot. Oh gosh. Is she staying on here? Okay, here's George Eliot. So I have different representatives of the systems. You are connecting the semantic processes, the syntactic, the grammatical processes, the morphological processes. And all of that is heading towards when we are fully immersed into connection to the affective system. So when I use that first quote by Hermann Hesse about it won't it gives us a pathway to the heart. Physiologically, that is absolutely what written language does. When we are immersed in deep reading, we are activating all of those systems, the visual system, the language system, the cognitive system, perceptual systems, obviously, but the affective system too. Now, the next slide, you stay there, Noah, don't you dare. I'm so sorry. The cerebellum, in a funny way, is all about you. It's about time, how the brain processes everything in time. And his cerebellum back here is going to allow all of this circuitry to go like that. And you have connected it all that fast. You are amazing products of automaticity that is learned from 5 years on. And that timing is going to make all the difference in children. And that was a beautiful introduction for those children who cannot connect all of that in time. And we have various categories of human neurodiversity involved in that. Dyslexia is one piece of it. And that's not my talk today, but it is very much part of having you understand that this brain is going to have to work that fast in order to do what I want you really to know tonight, and that is what deep reading is. Now, in many fields, it's called comprehension. But the reality is that we lift off the hood of comprehension to understand really what Proust said so beautifully, that what really gives us is this place, the sanctuary, what he calls this place where it is he calls it a fertile miracle of communication that takes place in solitude, that allows us to go beyond the wisdom of authors. Thank you for your contribution, and where is Marcy? Thank you for your most recent contributions to being the author whose wisdom is a foundation for us to go beyond. That's the Proustian pause. That's the ultimate aspect of reading. But before that are the deep reading processes that I want I'm going to let you off the hook, Noah, but please tell me. All of these are what I'm going to be calling the deep reading processes. It begins with background knowledge, and those of you who know Alfred, this is an important aspect for all of you who are studying media in its various ways. Reading, written language, all of this is cumulative in your brain. What goes beyond us is what comes out of the sum of what we read. And Alfred is one of my most important colleagues, who is the first curator of the museum in Lisbon, dedicated to the study of reading. The first person. Those of you who know it's a history-based historian. But while we have these women up there, what does it do to one of the most important functions of being a human? That is empathy. Empathy is one of the aspects of reading, of deep reading, that is so misunderstood. But Junot Dion said this so beautifully. The novel is the closest to telepathy we can come. I can leave my tiny town in Illinois where I grew up. I can leave it and become a person who could go anywhere. A novel allows me to look into your frontal lobe and your attention, say, he isn't asleep. But the reality is that it allows us to become another person. It allows us to have thoughts and feelings of others historically. In terms of today's society, where, and I'm not sure the other slide will happen, but if it does, I will give credit to amazing, one of my favorite novelists, Marilyn Robinson, who in a beautiful interview with Barack Obama said this: the trend towards seeing other as sinister other is the greatest danger to our democracy. I say to you that the perspective taking, the empathy building, that stories, that novels, that written language give is one of our best protectors of democracy and is essential, as is the rest of degree. Now, the sum of most of these processes is a penultimate time. And this is where I wish I had Noah back, but what we're doing is to evaluate where his frontal lobes are, right there. Yours, the frontal lobe courtship, the dance for truth, is what happens or doesn't happen in milliseconds. You are making hypotheses, you are refuting it, you are saying, wait, this agrees with all that I know, I infer the truth, or I deny it, I refuse it. And this courtship takes time in your frontal lobe. This is one of the most important aspects of critical. It's going, unfortunately, threatened right now, especially in our youth. And in you, you who know so much about communication, nevertheless, what we have here is an assault on truth that, from my point, is influenced by the lack of time we give when we skim on mediums that have as their affordances an advantage for multitasking and skimming and getting to the end of a page or the end of a story or the end of a book. We will be the master. We don't understand the absolute importance of the connection between empathy and critical analysis in our hope to bring discernment to our young. Now, I said Lance's essay and set really influenced me. These quotes come straight out of that first essay by Lance, the issue to etc. Hannah Arendt said this, and it was so striking. Facts and events are infinitely more fragile things than axioms, discoveries, and theories. But look at this recent version of that. Truth won't always win out, and the public sphere can't be contained. This is a lesson perpetually learned, relearned, when novel media technologies flood the information space. This is your field. This is your field talking to you and to me. But what we have to realize is that we have to be vigilant in how we, in fact, understand it ourselves. And here is where I think the reading brain can help us in several dimensions. When you understand that all of these processes, deep reading, are very important for our thinking, there is an element often missed. I think some of you may have read an essay by David Brooks not too long ago, in which he said somewhere, sometime, somewhere along the line, beauty went missing. When we think about beauty, we have to have time to perceive it. That discerning, that quiet eye is something that is the sum of what we bring to it. And whether we're talking about Wordsworth or Marilyn Robinson, who really saw beauty as a strategy of emphasis, if it's not recognized, the text is not understood. And this is one of the missing things when we discuss about how deep reading is changing or not, or close reading, especially my English literature colleagues will call it close reading. I'm under the hood. And under that hood, you see that there are not milliseconds sufficiently given to any of these processes in the same way that we once read no more than 5-10 years ago. And this is your brain at the ultimate level. Deep reading, ultimately, is that Proustian pause where all of these processes, and you look at this and you understand the beauty in the complexity of what you are bringing to bear. All of these are sophisticated processes, but they can ultimately, when we have insights, activate the entire brain. There are few things more activating the brain than playing a concerto or reading a difficult poem are reading Science and Sanity. I'm going to try harder. But the reality is, we are integrating all that in that deep reading brain in time. I can't wait to read Lance's book on time, his essay. But I'm only going to be talking about two versions of time. One is the milliseconds that are needed by all of you to really immerse and go deeply into underlining those words. What lies under those words that activates so much of your knowledge? That's as important as anything. But a different kind of time that I also want to suggest to you, especially from Han Byung-chul, a wonderful Korean, somewhat controversial. He's a Korean philosopher in Berlin. And he has this beautiful book called, Lance, you read it? The Scent of Time. And what he talks about, from my standpoint, is that penultimate moment when we have time to think our own thoughts, to think deeply, to go beyond whatever that author has. And what he says is this: acceleration is the cause of the loss of meaning that is threatening us. The furious pace with which successive images pass does not permit any lingering contemplation. The images only fleetingly touch the retina. You just experienced them. You just saw what Han Byung-chul was trying to tell you about. It didn't allow me. I have to tell you for myself. It was rough here. It's rough to be able to say, I'm going to make you attend however distracted you are by the fleeting nature of images. And that is part of what the media is doing. And that's what he's criticizing. Why? The images only fleetingly touch the retina and do not attract lasting attention. Now, Marty actually talked about attention, and I want to turn to that. No meaning bestows duration on the semblance of beauty, what we've just talked about. Thus, one zaps through the world. This is your area, and this is my area. But I need to show you, in various ways, that it is affecting our country in ways that some of you had no idea about. In fact, most of you. The state of literacy that allows deep thinking is called proficiency. In this country, only 1/3 of our 4th graders and 8th graders are reading that level. 1/3 of our future citizens. Only 1/2 of that 1/3 are with our children of color. And our children of color, unfortunately, are not achieving basic levels, 50%. This is unconscionable. And we know better. And we can do better. This is not dyslexia. This is Simca. This is equity in its worst form, to see what is not happening. And these children are ours. They're mine. They're yours. And we have, as a country, a real responsibility to think about what is the evidence about what is happening at each juncture. And I can't a few seconds, but I use T.S. Eliot always at this juncture because he said this poetically, and I would it slightly differently. Where is the wisdom lost? Where's the knowledge lost in information? I start, where is the knowledge lost in information? And then, where is wisdom lost in knowledge? That takes time to consolidate. I need you to know, and I wish I had really more time on that reading, when you skim. And here's where I'm going to say something really important to this audience. Many of you are going to be offended by it. I know that. You are offended by the idea that part of our entire work on different media is, I'm saying something very critical, but I need you to know, I am never talking about binaries. Like my colleague Sherry Turkle, I'm simply saying to you that when we innovate, we must ask what the innovation disrupts or diminishes, either in our children or in ourselves. That's my question. So I'm always going to be talking about the advantages and disadvantages of both our multiple media. And you know more about the multiplicity of media than I ever will. But I will tell you that the brain processes these different media different ways according to their affordances. So this plasticity that I talked about before will be shaped. The way the circuit is used is going to be shaped by these different media. Now, very importantly, the first, and Marty, I'm going to make you attend. Marty, you talked about attention. This is the first element under attack in our children. The attentional changes in our children are happening in ways that so many of you are dimly aware of, but you don't read the journal, medical journals or neuroscience journals. You don't know that between infancy and 1 year, the amount of digital exposure will have changes on their cognitive and language development. That's just one piece of it. If you move into 0 to 8, you will have children who are being bathed in flight, fight hormones. Some of you have kids or grandkids and know that after the iPad, what is the first thing they say after they've been on the iPad? What's the first thing? It's a 2-word utterance. I'm bored. The threshold for boredom has changed so much. I would swear that most of you never used the word I'm bored when you were between 0 and 5. I would bet a lot of money. Give me that $1,000 that you gave Marcy. We didn't do that because we had a way of distracting ourselves in ways that weren't constantly causing us to move from thing to thing. And there's a reflex in us called the novelty bias. We will go to anything that is novel because we are programmed biologically in a Darwinian sense to move to the distraction of the novel response. And the frontal lobes of our children are ill-prepared to do that. And so we're having, in essence, little addicted children. If we analyze in brain images the children who are looking at the same exact fairy tale being read to by their parents or being listening on an audio or on an iPad, the areas of the brain responsible for language are being activated most by the parent. Second, audio. Third, by the iPad. The passivity, we'll talk about between 0 and 5, the passivity that they are learning and this constant distraction is making changes in attention, language, and even some aspects of cognition. But my real worry about cognition is for our older kids. We have to understand that young readers today are becoming less able to handle nonfiction, comprehension, text. Crisis in nonfiction. That's the reading crisis in the United States. What we can do is essential by admitting that you were talking about you're always, not always, but using Lance's essay, you're always talking about non-Aristotelian logic. Is going all the way back to Socrates, who worried that if we read, we would have, our youth have a delusion of truth from the superfluity, that they wouldn't examine words. Well, here we are, after going through all of these wonderful periods of time, back to the same fear, that the superfluity of information is what they are ascribing to truth. And everyone here knows it who is teaching. And I would just say, Lance, I'm not sure your students, I know Grace and Noah would not be like that, but at UCLA, where we literally take a class of psychology students and look at the ones who are on the laptop and the other who are taking their notes by hand, there is a considerable difference on the test. The ones who are doing it by hand are actually attending and being less distracted by all the things available to them. And so their academic performance is better. But even worse, I know no one, Grace, will never do this, but so many of our students, our graduate students, are reading the beginning of the essay, they skim, and they go right to the end. And voila, the history, the philosophy, the argumentation, the science that preceded it is being not conditioned, but having less importance. And this is something that I know that in our fields we are seeing, but the evidence is becoming really tough now for the children and our young adults. So I'm only going to give you two things to think about. One is a brand new Singapore study, Harvard Milieu, Singapore. Kids 0 to 8, very clear. The more digital exposure, the less the attentional and language areas are functioning in the same way, and the worse academic performance. This is 0 to 8. Now the next groups are huge. Yours has been ahead of us. They aren't ahead of the general semantics, I know that. But they are ahead of the rest of us in studying these issues. And they're showing a huge meta-analysis. This one has 171. The latest one has 450,000. They simply look at what the same passage is on print and digital with comprehension questions. Got it? Pretty easy study. Over 50 studies. 2000 to 217, then 217 to 223. The students, the young adults who are reading it on print are doing significantly better in their comprehension of plot, sequencing, and detail, etc. Now, some of you may ask, as I did, and my colleague in Israel, Ackerman, said, okay, but let's look just at the digital natives, the last part of that group. And what they find is the opposite of my prediction. I don't know what your prediction would be. What do you think? Do you think they're better on print? Put your hand up. How many think they're better on digital? Okay? Not only are they better in print, and this is not my prediction, they were significantly better than the others who were better on print, who had come before. Why? So Ackerman asked, what do you perceive? What do you think you're better on? They said, oh, we know we're better on the screen because we're faster. And here's where I come to you. This is what you get every day. I'm glad to have this slide. Not a single one of you dare try to read this. But this is what you do. These are just some of the multiple studies out there. Nicholas Carr, he and I talked years ago. He wrote the book Shallows. And remember, well, you don't know this, but he wrote a beautiful article in the New Yorker about the shallowing hypothesis. And that is directly related to the worries I have about deep reading and deep processing. Now, if you can't deep read this, and yet that is your day, you are a whizzing artist. Pompeo Schul says, zapping through information as a defense strategy that we all have. No one is on the laptop any more than I am. I am with you on that because that is our lives. But I need you to know there is a cost to what you read and how you read. And this is because in our Einstein research shows us what you do when you read by and large is a Z. You do the top, you scroll down, or you zip that word spot down and do the bottom. Or you do an F. I made a great mistake 2 months ago at a monastery to say, so how many of you are Zers and how many of you are Fers? 100 black cassocks. I couldn't believe I ever said that. I never said it before. But that is who we are. We're one or the other. Because what we are doing is we have so much bombardment of information. And you have to study this more than I do. We have to work together. I'm giving you one small slice of a perspective. And you I want you to take this on and think about the implications of how we can do better. And here's where we get to the last slides. And here is my favorite, one of my favorite philosophers other than Marshall McLuhan, Terry. And that's Walter at St. Louis University. And Amos was so prescient. He said all this at so many levels before. Technologies are not mere exterior aids, but also interior transformations of consciousness, and never more than when they affect the word. Now, I told Deanie and hi, that my whole life has been spent since a Harvard dissertation on the word retrieval process and the basics of dyslexia on one question. How do we retrieve a single word? How do we do it? How? Actually, one of my kids said, well, Mom, did you find out? No, I'm still working. But one of the things that affects the retrieval of words, single words, words large, writ larger, is what the medium you are reading it on. Walter wasn't thinking about the brain, but he is exactly right. It is changing the circuitry. It doesn't change that. It doesn't go away. That's a question that I think we really have to look at. Is it diminishing? My personal take on the research at this point is not that it goes away, but that we short circuit. We only use parts of it, or we use like in multitasking. You know in the multitasking research that you can do it all, but you're doing it at the surface. Same thing with the circuit. You're using your own circuit, not that you can't deep read. And my intellectual rights property, whatever lawyer wrote me after he read my book said, Maryanne, I do everything on the screen. And he said, but I read deeply because I freeze it. I freeze every passage that's important, or I print it out. And this is the choice that we have. How we read and what we read is really essential. Now, I only have a few more slides, and I can't believe I'm actually going to get you out of here before 10. I really, really worked for you. I want you to know that. But I tell you, he said this beautiful line. It seems to me that a pestilence has struck the human race in its most distinctive faculty, the use of words. It is a plague of flinting language, revealing itself as a loss of cognition that tends to level out all expression into the most generic anonymous. Extinguishing, think back to Charles Taylor and the drive and reminisce of a spark that shoots out from the collision of words and new thoughts. We must preserve this. This is essential. This is the drive that Charles Taylor said makes us a language animal. But we are a language species. And this is what Calvino presciently said long before today. Now, the complexities that come out of this view, I'm going to summarize very quickly in the next 10 minutes. There's nothing new on this slide. But as Pascal once said, there's nothing new, but there is new arrangement. And I want to arrange a few known thoughts by you in the next 3 slides. Silo reading is part of the plan. We go to the areas in the media that are most familiar to us, that we don't have to think. They are confirmatory bias is something all of you teachers know so much more about. My standpoint, it is a diminution of critical thinking when you only go to places where you are having the thoughts and perspectives supporting your own. These platforms will not allow what I believe are the milliseconds like we saw in Noah's brain to grasp what's underlying the message. To realize, as our Stanford student studies show, they are misled by misinformation. We're not even talking about disinformation. We're talking about the time it takes to go after the truth and evaluate it and grasp complexity, understand other viewpoints, perceive beauty. We have to have time to perceive and connect our aesthetic with the rest. Now, this is where I think Lance has long known my position on this. And that is when critical analysis are diminishing either in our youth or in all of us, we are not going to pay the same attention to the perspectives of others. We're going to be more susceptible to false information, but extremely susceptible to demagoguery that uses a playbook. Repetition, arousal of fear, arousal of anger. Everything I'm talking to you about in terms of screen reading goes out the window, just as that one slide showed earlier. You use these three elements and you stop critical thinking. People ask me, how can so many amazingly wonderful, kind, beautiful, intelligent people believe certain things that are illogical? Here's your formula. Every demagogue knows it. Now, the sum is that without empathy, without critical analysis, we have less attention to the multiplicity of viewpoints. And here's where I use Lance. Again, I'm sorry, Lance. I was so impressed. I'm embarrassing you and I don't care. Factual truth is especially vulnerable. The problem is that even with the best of intentions, logos, rational discourse tends to get lost in the shuffle, leading to purely emotional decision making and the cult of personality. Repetition, arousal of fear, arousal of anger makes others responsible for what we are lost, making us consider others the enemy, as Marilyn Robinson said to Barack Obama. Now, I'm going to have to skip some of my slides, but I want you to know there is a beautiful essay about Umberto Eco and Cardinal Martini on democracy, which goes actually very close to what you wrote about, Lance, so that might be something for all of you. But I want to end with 3-4 slides quickly about antidotes, because I want to be as positive as I feel about the use of knowledge as our true antidote. And I returned to Alberto Mangel, and he said, well, it's a cornerstone of faith for him. It comes from Kipling's story, The Eye of Allah. For the pain of the soul, there is, outside of God's grace, but one drug, and that is human's craft, learning, that will propel the action of mind. And Steve Pinker has given a lot of thought. I don't always agree. He's a dear colleague, linguist, cognitive scientist, but he has something great to tell us about the development of habits of mind in our youth. Sometimes we can hold people to a higher standard, and they can be inspired to set their sights higher than collectively destructive goals. I believe that we are in a moment where I said, maybe we've passed through that hinge moment, but maybe we haven't. And knowledge is what I want as the lever in between what has happened, what is happening, and what may happen. That's the East of Eden. That's those of you who remember the East of Eden, the Chinese gentleman reading the Hebrew Bible, learning Hebrew, and at the end of all their work for years was to discover the word timshel, thou mayest. Well, I think we're in a timshel moment when we may use our knowledge to not just put our thumb in the dike, but to really halt some of the destructive elements of the threat to mediums. And I work not just with threat, but with Apple, with Google, just as a consultant, not a consultant, not as a paid consultant, as someone who I come in and say, this is what we're worried about, and let's worry together. So this is not anti-technology by any means. It's saying, how your collective knowledge, you know so much more than I do about the use of media and ecology, but I know We have to preserve this present reading brain as we expand it. And so I use this slide as a proposal that I'm giving across the country, actually, and Europe is even more interested in it, that we use those early years to develop deep reading in our youth. And we use print. We never disregard the digital. It's like learning two languages. We are programming, we're coding. We're using it for complementary knowledge, for complementary media experiences. But learn deep reading on print, and then as it becomes firm in that circuit, to pass over and be able to learn deep reading and how to use it in any medium. The United States is only beginning to make the kinds of recommendations for screen use. I'll just put it on up there and show you that, especially France, which I have to tell you, I just love the name of their report. Children and Screens in Search of Lost Time. Only the French one, you don't quote Proust in there. But they are really, in fact, Macron has a French translation of Read or Come Home, just by the way. But we are using this knowledge to help inculcate in our young. And in my introduction it said I am always advocating for children. I'm advocating for children deep reading. And so whether it's for dyslexic children or struggling readers, we have a whole program we are developing, my family and I actually. We are going to suggest to all, everybody can take it, copy whatever we're doing, but we want them to inculcate the desire for deep reading from grade 1 on. And so we have, just to give you the tiniest little, I know this is really light. This is T-Lex, stands for Trithinkosaurus Lex. And it helps our children think ahead, prediction strategy, think back, try to remember, consolidate, but think for yourself. Connect it to what you know. And so we're really trying to help children be aware of their own thought processes, and that reading can provide a sanctuary like nothing else for their own best thoughts, however old they are. And most of you know some of the quotes from Martha Nussbaum or some of her work, but I will just give this one paragraph. It would be catastrophic to become a nation of technically competent people who've lost the ability to think critically, examine themselves, and respect the humanity of others. Now, I'm sorry, Lance, this is only the third slide dedicated to you, but I was so impressed by this essay, and if everybody else reads it, they'll know why. But he really made me understand that part of your work is very aligned with mine. We have to really, in addition to the transmission, the beautiful transmission of knowledge and values, but we also have to have the teaching of the scientific method, fact-checking, reality, replicability, deductive logic. If we do that, if Lance's vision and my vision could come together, it would be a lifespan approach to deep reading and appreciation of others, of knowledge, of the quiet eye, a knowledge of how everybody is threatened when critical thinking and empathy are less. Everybody is the lesser when you, like I, some of you have read the book, my last book, where I could no longer read Hermann Hesse, at some point my favorite author. I could no longer read and appreciate it. It took me 2 weeks to come back to myself through a disciplining of the way my circuit was using it. Because how you use that circuit most leads over to the rest of your reading. So please know we're all together in this, but we all need to understand that the future of our species is happening this moment and how we educate our children. The greatest test ever made of human wisdom and decency might very well come to this age. We must teach and learn broadly and seriously. And I'm ending it with your neo-postman. Children are the living messages we send to a time we will not see. It is a selfless act that you do to distill and give that knowledge base that you possess away. Thank you for this honor to represent what you do. Thank you so very much. This began the hardest and ended the nicest. Thank you so much. I know I'm sure are questions that people have to leave. So what I'm going to do is make myself right there. And if you have questions, you come to me. Because I know there will be questions.
Oh.